Hey, it's pronounced Vag and I'm Adam, and in this video I'm installing deAutoLED's latest version of the front and rear Footwell lighting kit. This is the multicolor 4-piece, has the remote, has 4 of these LEDs. I'm installing this in my Mark 7 Golf R. Now, a quick little backstory is that I actually bought this kit a while back. It used to come with a rear LED that was a stick-on strip, one of those ones where it had the markings where you could cut it to length. I reached back out to them. I said, hey, I think you could really improve this product by offering that rear LED to be the same exact one as the front, because I found out that the seat brackets in the back of these have the slot for the housing to fit back there. So I thought that would be a really cool OEM Plus upgrade to be able to do that and also improve their product kind of to how I wanted it to be built. So they worked with me, they sent out basically a finished product, and this is the installation of this product. And I have no doubt that it is going to work just as good as the rest of their products that I've had. So I'm really excited to get this install done. I will run through exactly how I do it, gonna remove the seats, how I'm going to tuck the wiring. I think that, while there's a lot of people who might cut some corners on the install on this, I think it's so simple that it's not really worth cutting the corners. You can really get a really nice OEM Plus tuck, fit, finish, get it all in there the right way, and end up with a really great looking product. So stay tuned. We're gonna dive into this, and here we go. All right, let's talk for a second about what you get in the kit. You get 4 LEDs, basically front and rear, left and right. And with those LEDs, there's 2 of them that have longer wires and 2 of them that have shorter wires. The longer wires are intended to be used up front. The ones with the shorter wires are intended to be used in the rear. That way there's this kind of short wire that you're able to attach to the seat bracket and harness, and it'll fit just right. You also get 2 housings, those will go in the rear. And you also get this sweet remote that allows you to dim, turn on and off, change colors, have a party. We'll check out some of those features after the install. All right, so the majority of this video is gonna focus on the driver's side because there's some complicated bits over here where the hood release is that I think will be a lot more helpful to people, and then should be pretty simple over on the passenger side. But first things first, I gotta get this seat out. It's a size 10 triple square for 4 bolts that is in the seat. I'm removing the ones in the back first so that then I can go to the front, remove those, and then lean the seat back, and I'll show you exactly how to disconnect the wiring harness for the seat and yank it out. All right, so I just got all the bolts out. I think one thing that'll be super helpful for anybody trying to get the seat out of here is before you disconnect it from the wiring harness, go ahead and make it as compact as possible. So lower it and then slide it right about the middle of the rail so that, well, my seat decided to take a break. Make sure you lower it back down, slide it about to the middle position, and maybe lean the seat forward, and it should come out pretty easy. All right, so here's what it looks like underneath this front driver's seat. All you have to do is lift up this little carpet flap here. There's just a little pin here that you can pop with your fingernails or a screwdriver if you don't have fingernails. And then it just, whoa! I wiggled it up and it went flying. All right, so under this little carpet flap, you've got 2 wiring connectors, the red and yellow to disconnect, and that's it. In addition to the red and yellow connectors, there's also one of those little zip tie clips here. If you can, try to pry that out of there. I broke mine, so that's how it's gonna be. On the red connector, it's pretty easy. You just depress this little tab right here, and you just pull straight up and it comes right out. Then for this yellow one, you just pull this, or you slide this black piece straight up. You might have to put some force into it, but be careful with it, and then depress it, and it should just wiggle straight up out of there. And now, depending on what you've done with this, you should be able to get that whole wiring harness disconnected, and you won't have to mess with anything else under the seat. One thing I realized while I was editing this video is that I made the mistake of turning on the accessory while I had one of the seats disconnected. When you have one of the airbag connectors disconnected, it's going to turn on an airbag light or warning light. I plugged it all back in after I was done, drove around, it didn't turn itself off. So I had to use my OBD11 to clear the code, light went away. So if you don't have a device to do that, do not turn on the car or the accessory if you have either of the seats unplugged. It's going to throw a light. All right, before I pull the seat out, I'm also gonna recommend adjusting the steering wheel. Push it up and in as far as it'll go. That way you have as much room as possible to work around.
See out here.
All right, since I've got the seat out, I'm gonna start with installing the LED on the seat itself. So now you can see in this bracket, that little square where the housing fits right in there. I've tested this with the foam in there and it's able to hold. So you might consider cutting that out if it bothers you, but it seems to do fine just with, even though it's pretty tight, seems to hold okay. So the first thing that you want to do is to open up this housing. I like to just press down a little bit on this clear plastic part, you pull up on the black, and it pops right up. If you try to take it off on this side, I've broken this tab off before when I was doing some investigating, kind of figuring out how this all worked, and that comes right off. And that's how we're gonna put our LED in this rear housing. All right, so make sure you grab one of these LEDs that has a shorter wire. They're pretty different. I think it's about half the length of the other one. First thing that you wanna do, take that wire and you're going to fish it through the back side of this housing. And then just be really gentle as you pull this wiring through. So now we're at a point. You want to be super careful with this soldered point. If you flex it back and forth, it may disconnect. So just be really, really careful. All right, so the only issue with the fitment that I found on the deAutoLED housing is that the two little holes where the pins for the LED are supposed to go into are a little bit too wide. On the ones that I have already in the front on my Golf R, this is basically just one big open rectangle, so you don't have to find the openings for the pins to go into. You can see that when you put these pins in here, they start to splay out. It's not a big deal because you're not actually making a connection here for the rear LED. You're just trying to get this into the housing. And so once you slide that in there, you can see that those plastic pins line up with those holes, and you're gonna be able to kind of just set it in place on those fronts. Now on the back, you'll see that the LED sits in these stands right here. Then we're going to slide the black plastic backing forward, put this right side in first, and then the left side, and it may not close all the way, but it actually works pretty good. You can press it down. I don't know if you're gonna be able to get it to snap in place perfectly, but deAutoLED has said you don't need these backings or housings for any heat retention. So I'm just gonna leave it right like this, and that's how I'm gonna install it, and it'll just by pressure hold itself in place. All right, so here is the back of the seat, the bottom bracket here. The housing is gonna fit right into that rectangle. I'm just gonna go ahead and fish the wiring out through here. I'll show you exactly how I'm gonna connect it. And this, which would normally be a connector, is not actually gonna connect to anything because this wiring is going to connect to the front LED. So I'm going to kind of push some of this foam back, slip my finger under here to push the foam down, and then I'm able to get all the wiring tucked in there, get the housing popped into place, and you can let go, and look at that. That's made to fit right there. I believe this seat bracket is used on a lot of different Volkswagens, and if you have another Volkswagen that has this rectangle, you can do the same exact mod. It's pretty awesome. All right, so I've got my light in, I've got the wiring secure. I've run it right through this opening. I've put a zip tie here, I put a zip tie right down back here, and then basically I think I did 4 zip ties back onto the main harness. So now I've got the harness and I've got a little extra wire to play with that will tuck in there and plug in perfectly. All right, so we're gonna get into the front LED. It is located right under here, under the dashboard, right here. What I'm gonna do is remove the hood release lever. I'm gonna pop all of this trim up here so that I can run the wire underneath this trim, under the carpet, and then find a little hole where I'm going to end up fishing it right to there. All right, so guaranteed, one of the most challenging bits that you might come across if you're not familiar with how to remove this is the hood latch release. There's just one little clip behind here. Let me see if I can get in a position to show you. On the right side of this hood release, there's a little clip. I'm gonna zoom in and you're gonna be able to see it, I hope. There's just, yep, just that little edge that's peering out. I'll show you with my tiny little screwdriver. You just barely need to get down and around that edge. It's starting to come out. Let's see if you can see it there, yep. So when you start pulling this out, you're gonna need to push in to push it back behind the panel. Otherwise it'll get stuck on this, the panel edge here. So you push it straight back and then continue prying and it'll pull out of there a little bit. Oh, I gotta push back further just to get it tucked behind that panel. There it goes. So now I can slide it out there a little bit more. Now that we have that pin slid out as far as we can over that way, I'm gonna just get a broad interior trim tool piece. I'm gonna just start wiggling off this handle. You can probably just pull it with your hands, but I just wanna be really careful not to break any of this plastic in here. Oh, there it goes. Sweet. So this is the clip and it just slides right in this groove here and it fits right there. There it is. Here, let me just slide it out with my finger. So you're just going to pull it out a little ways. When you pull it out, it might bump up against that plastic piece. Push straight back to get it to tuck behind, and you'll get it out far enough to where you'll be allowed to pull that straight off there. The clip might pop off, and it might end up actually behind that panel, but it should be pretty easy to get to. When you reinstall, it's actually really nice because you just slide this clip straight back in here all the way, and the way it works is that there's just a little thing in there that you're able to just press it on and it'll hold it straight in place. Pretty neat. All right, so to start pulling up this trim piece here, I'm just gonna get my fingers up under this edge here, and I already lifted up this here a little bit, but it'll start popping up. You just run your fingers along the edge and be really careful not to pop it too far because you have this lighting that's in here. Sweet. All right, so I just popped up this trim piece here. There's a little connector right here, you know, a little tab that sits in there. Once you lift that up, it's able to swing out, but you don't want to swing it out too far because this ribbon right here is the connector for the little tiny thin blue light strip that runs right in here. So be super careful. Next step, since we have this part lifted off, or this part lifted off of here, I'm going to see how much of this panel we need to remove. All right, so I'm first gonna start with, there's like a little button right here. I'm just gonna get my little screwdriver. Oh, cripes, right underneath that. Oh, cool, it's just a little cap that pops off. I thought I broke it, but it's just a little tiny cap that then exposes where you can unscrew. See if my little tiny, yeah, even my little tiny screwdriver works. Just to take out this little tiny plastic screw that's right here. All right, so I'm gonna start lifting from, you know, this bottom edge here to start loosening it. Oh, and look at that. It's already wanting to come out. It was a little bit tucked in here behind this dead pedal rest, and it's mostly all coming out here. So I think I'm gonna see if I can't just take this whole piece out. There's a little bit up in here that is connected to the piece above. All right, so right in this seam, I'm gonna get my little interior trim tool up in between these two pieces here to disconnect it. I believe it just pops apart. Yep, there we go. So it just popped apart right there. And now I'm able to separate them and pull this piece completely out. So there's just a hole here. All I did was get my interior trim tool piece in between to wedge and just kind of twist, and it separated. So now, man, I have total access to this entire space. All right, so at least on this driver's side LED, if you go and try and pop this down, you know, and pull it out through the little hole that the housing sits in, there's very, very little wire behind here, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. There's just not a whole lot of length, and so it's just a whole lot easier if you just reach up in there, squeeze it, and disconnect it before you take out the housing. I'm just gonna put my fingers up in there, squeeze the sides of it, and right as you do that, you can just pull it straight out the back. And look at how short that little bit of wiring is. There's no way that you're gonna be able to get it out. So now that you have that disconnected, you can just pop out the housing here, and it'll fall right out. All right, here's a quick look at the difference between the OEM LED, single LED, versus the deAutoLED 6 multicolor LED. Well, it's 6 times as many LEDs on there. You can see that the pins are a little bit different, but there shouldn't be any problem with that connection and with powering that. Be really careful as you're pushing this through or pulling it through so you don't disconnect this connector here. That's obviously really important. You also want to be careful not to catch the wiring in a way that you're going to peel it up so that the wiring ends up being exposed. This is not something that is recommended by deAutoLED. This is just something that I saw was a pretty easy opportunity to keep this housing on here, and you know, it seems to fit and stay. All right, now if you have any problems with the connector, I've seen where people have had issues with these pins going in. So you can bend them just slightly to be able to fit, you know, kind of right in the center here. I would go ahead and try sliding it in, see if it goes in. If you're bumping up against not being able to make that connection, then you should go ahead and make some adjustments. Before you can go and put this housing back up in there, you're gonna need to fish the wiring. Here's the path that I'm gonna take, and I'll show you after I get it done. All right, so the routing that I've taken for the wiring, you can see the black wire dropping down here through this hoop. And then I tucked it in between all the wires that go behind that wiring harness just so that it can hold itself in place. And then I decided to come down and underneath the main, so it's tucked underneath there. And then I ran it along the side here up until about halfway in the door sill. And at that point, I went underneath the wiring harness, and I plan to go right down through this gap here. Now, to fish it around this little corner down here under the carpet, I figured out a little trick that was really helpful. I'm being super careful with this ribbon. Here is, let me get this back out here. Here's the end of my wire. I've already gone and taken it along this channel and underneath the wiring harness. So now I have all of my slack. I'm going to tuck it underneath the carpet. Then I'm gonna go under this side of the carpet, and you'll be able to fish it straight over there. I'm gonna go ahead and pull through all of my slack. So I'll be able to get all of that across there. There's a little bit of carpet pad right here that the wire will go down and tuck behind. But now I'm able to use my hands to just take this wire and push down right around this corner so that the wire just naturally falls into place. And then once you get that wire tucked around there, I'm probably gonna spend a little bit more time cleaning that up. You're gonna end up with probably about a foot of this stuff. I'm just gonna coil it up and leave it right down in this little cavity here. There's plenty of space for it. The reason why I wanna go down and around that corner is just so that there's not any potential for the seat bracket to come sit on top of that wire and pinch the wire. That would be terrible because it'd basically just cut it. All right, so now it's time for reassembly. I've already got my light connected. I'm gonna get this kick panel in place. I'm gonna pop this all down. One thing I wanna point out about this is that these slots here are where the connecting points are. So I would highly recommend not running your wire right along here where you're going to potentially pinch the wiring. So Be really careful. Those metal things, if you push hard enough, really like to bend, so just be gentle with it. You'll get it in. This gasketing is gonna have to, kind of be pulled up to fit right around the edge there. So yeah, just take time, take effort to make sure it's nice fit and finish. All right, so while I was trying to install this bottom kick panel, I was trying to connect it to the piece above it, and it basically just like fell right out as I was trying to make that connection. I already, without showing you guys, I had taken this little side panel out. If you get in between the seams there, it just pops straight out. There's 3 little connecting points there. All right, so I've just gotten this trim piece back up in here. I snapped them together and then I fished it back up in there together. The only thing is that it took a little bit of time to get this gasket back over the edge, which, was totally worth taking that piece off to help get it back together. All right, so now you just have to get this. Make sure to tuck this kick panel in behind the edge of your dead pedal. You want to get the gasket kind of pulled up over the edge here. And it seems like it's just going to kind of sit right in place. Oh boy. Oh man. So there's also a little connector I didn't realize. Let's see where that screw goes into. I just shot the piece out there because it didn't quite fit in. So I'm going to push that back in there. It goes in one way. Gonna get that little screw in there so that it holds tight. Get that little cap to put on the screw. You're gonna get your hood release lever, and you can put that little clip that goes in there all the way in, and then you'll just kind of make sure that it's centered, and you can go ahead and just press that right on there. And now it's in place again. All right, now, last bit is just this little trim right here. You'll lift it up to get it to set in place correctly. On this back side here, it was pushed a little bit away from the gasket. So I just kind of lifted and pulled it back into place, and it just kind of helped seat it, where it's supposed to belong in the gasket. So now I believe the best thing for me to do is just to wiggle it. All right, there we go. It just kind of popped back into place. Now there's 3 connection points here that I'm going to push down on. I'm going to start from this back end since that's where it was last connected. There's 1. Maybe 1 right in the middle, 2, then 1 here on the end, 3. All right, I'm totally set. Just make sure that this gasket piece here, right along the edge, is fitting properly and getting over the edge of your trim.
First way that I got it out seemed to go okay. Okay, I think it's mostly in. Just lean it back so I can get this connected.
I'm just gonna go ahead and connect it all here while you watch.
That should fit nicely. Breaking anything to fit it right back in place. Awesome.
So one thing I noticed while I was taking the seat out is that the threads for the door side of the seat, they move a little bit. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to kind of lock the seat in place on the center side, because those threads do not move. And then I'll do the ones on the door side. I read somewhere somebody said 45 Newton meters is the torque for these bolts, so I'm gonna try that out. Awesome. All right, so I've just gone and got the passenger seat out, just as easy as the driver's seat. But I've run into just a little bit of a thing here where I think this is the motor control for the upper part of the seat. This wire here is obviously right in the way. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of scoot it over to the left here. I'll push the foam down, slide this over so it'll end up landing right about here and give me enough room for the housing to kind of squeeze in that space. All right, let's talk real quick about this controller or remote and how it controls the LEDs. All 4 of the LEDs that are in the car now are individually controlled. So using this one remote, you just have to kind of go up close to it and press whatever action you want to perform. You can turn it off, you can turn it on, you can choose any of these colors. You can also dim them or brighten them. And then there's also these different actions that you can perform. One thing that I didn't realize when I first got the lights is that these dimming buttons also act as rate of speed for these different actions. So I put a bunch of them in flash mode, and some of them were going, very slow, and then some of them were going like very fast. I didn't realize that you can turn up and down the speed using those. When the colors are in a solid state mode, that's when you can use these dimming buttons. Another thing that I noticed too is that when I bring the car on and say I want to change the dimming, sometimes I have to change it to another color and then back first before the dimming action is, works. But there's flash, which is basically just the same color flashing on and off. Strobes through a bunch of different colors. Fade actually goes a little bit, softer through the colors, and smooth kind of does something similar. So let's check out what those look like in the car. All right, by default, this is my preferred setting with these lights. This is on blue, all the way dim on all 4 Footwells. It may not be coming across very blue in the camera, but it is very blue in person. And it's hard for me to tell if it's flickering in the camera, but it's not flickering at all in person. So it's super, super cool looking. It matches the doors. I really like it. I did try running with white, but the white is just too bright. It can't get quite as dim as the OEM LEDs. These do still have some functionality dimming with the controls in the interface on the car, but not exactly how the OEM LEDs do. When you get down to like 10 or 20% on the interface, they get so dim that it just looks like they're off. But there's a little bit of adjustability on that interface still. Let's check out some of the different modes. And so now I have the Footwell in the driver's seat turned all the way up on the brightness, but all the others are still remaining on the lowest setting. It's still pretty dim. It's not too bright. I think depending on the color, the brightness is going to have a little bit different effect. And when we change to white, it can get very, very bright. So there's white with all the blue on lowest setting. When you go and change white to the dimmest setting, it's still pretty bright. There we go. Again, it's hard to tell in the camera just because everything is adjusting, but it's white, or it's brighter than I would want to run while I'm driving, so that's why I usually have it on blue. All right, now let's check out the different settings here. We'll do the flash setting first, where you can use the brightness buttons to change how quickly it goes, or the rate of speed. So you can go very slow flash all the way to super fast. On any color, it will do that. You just have to change the color and then hit flash. And then, let's see, this is strobe. It goes through every single color, and again, you can change the rate of speed. And then fade. I like to turn this one up. This one looks really cool, going fast. And then smooth. This one just goes red, green, blue. But fade will go through all of the colors. Let's turn it up real fast here. All right, so every single one of these lights is independently controlled. You can see the passenger side I still have set to the blue dim color. On the driver's side, I've changed both of them to go through the fade mode. So they're fading through all of the different colors, but they won't, it'll be really, really hard to ever get them all to do the same thing at the same time, unless you just set them all to strobing on the same color. But it still looks pretty darn cool. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the show. Nothing else to do except enjoy the lights.